everyone, and welcome back to our Golden 20s. We are very excited to announce that for the first episode ever, Sadie and I are sitting in the same room.
Recording together. It's so funny because, like we were saying right before we started recording, is we've been doing this for 40 weeks now, aka like the majority of this year.
Yeah.
And it's all been recorded virtually. So now that we're in the same room recording in person, it's like,
Weird.
is this even a real podcast?
Yeah. We don't know how to act.
Yeah,
right?
We really don't. But I do need to give Tegan a shout out. She has us hooked up with the most like official mics, like the most official setup. Just came in and made us, a real podcast.
Yeah, it's official now. It only took 40 weeks.
I'm loving this.
But here we are.
Here we are.
So for this week's episode, we are going to answer some questions we got on Instagram. I think we posted this like a couple weeks ago, and a lot of it's centered around motivation, which I feel like is a good topic to bring up now as like the days get shorter, things get darker, a lot of people start to lose motivation.
Exactly.
So that is what we're going to start with. So the first question we got was, with cold weather and shorter days, oh my God, it's like they read my mind.
We're all in the same boat here.
With cold weather and shorter days, I'm struggling to stay motivated. How do you find and maintain motivation?
I love this one. I love this so much because I feel like it's very relatable. Obviously, like you said, they read your mind. Like everyone's kind of in the same boat right now, but I've also been really feeling this.
Yeah.
It's like so drastic when the days get shorter. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, I don't know, all of a sudden it's like 6 p.m. and like pitch black outside and you're like, okay, I guess winter's here.
Yeah.
And it's here for the next like couple months, you know what I mean? So definitely sneaks up and it's hitting me hard. But I feel like the biggest thing, and this was like a TikTok sound back when I was on TikTok, so that's a long time ago, but it was like talking about how you can't just wait to do things until you're motivated. You need to do things to be motivated, if that makes sense.
Right.
And that is 100% how it works for me. Like if I'm just like, no, I'm not motivated to do this, and then I don't do anything, then I get even lazier and even more tired and even, you know, more non-motivated. So it's like, you just need to show up. You need to do the things regardless if you feel like doing them or not.
Yeah. I like the idea of like small manageable tasks. Like I keep hearing about on TikTok, cleaning burnout, which is like something I'm guilty of, is like, okay, I'm cleaning. I have to deep clean my entire house and it's going to take 4 hours.
Yeah.
But then it's like the next day when inevitably you have to do the dishes, you're tired because you spent 4 hours cleaning the night before. And it's like you start to lose that motivation even though you just had a lot.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of taking it slow. Even if you feel like one day you have a lot of motivation, like you don't have to go all out, go all crazy.
Yeah.
But you know, breaking things down into smaller steps, I feel like also really helps.
Yeah. And sometimes like some tasks are extremely daunting and you don't even want to start. So you don't do anything on it at all. So I think something is better than nothing. You know what I mean? So definitely breaking it down to smaller steps and gradually working on it is definitely like whatever it is in this situation.
Yeah.
Like that's a really great way to kind of slowly motivate yourself, or at least be productive, even if you don't have the motivation to like fully tackle like a goal or something head on kind of thing.
I'm also a big fan of scheduling things in. Like for instance, I edit this podcast every single Sunday, 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, and it's just like, you've got to do the podcast whenever, it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
Because like you end up working and then you have to make dinner and then you've got to clean up the kitchen after dinner and then it's time to wind down for bed. So if you're just waiting for the perfect opportunity to get something done, it's never going to happen. Whereas if you're like, oh, Sunday mornings, I do, you know, I deep clean the bathroom, I edit my podcast, I, you know, do the dishes, whatever it is, I feel like it makes it easier and it makes the decision-making like process go away. It's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, because when something's routine, you don't need to be motivated to do it. You know, like you're just doing it because that's your routine. Like,
Yeah.
that's what you do on Sundays. Like, you're not
Yeah.
waiting for motivation to like kickstart that. I think that's really, really great advice. I also think one of my sisters said this, like when I was having like a huge breakdown to her a few weeks ago, and she was just kind of talking to me about like, you know, seasons of life and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of one of those where I was like spiraling downward and I just like
Mhm.
couldn't stop myself from like continuing to spiral kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel this is like especially like relevant for when we're talking about motivation, but
Mhm.
being aware of your self-talk and what you actually believe when you're telling yourself things. So when it comes to like motivation, for instance, if you are always telling yourself like, oh, I'll do that later,
Yeah.
will you actually do it later? You know what I mean? Will you actually show up for yourself?
Mhm.
Or like, are you just kind of brushing it off and then it never gets done and then you're constantly letting yourself down? And I feel like this is maybe like really depressing and maybe not like motivational or like inspirational, whatever. But I think it's something just to be like cautious of, because for me, as soon as I'm like, oh my God, like I don't believe myself, I'm not showing up for myself, like I'm allowing myself to just constantly let myself down, like that's what kind of
Right.
snaps me out of it and motivates me to do whatever it is I say I'm going to do, and breaks the habit of just constantly putting things off until I'm motivated to do them.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it's kind of like dark maybe, but it's like, I don't know, it's like that like reality check where it's just like, don't let yourself down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think that maybe works well with like the idea of scheduling things where if you have the like talk with yourself, you keep saying that you're going to deep clean the bathtub and you never do. So if you're putting it off today, you have to schedule sometime in this week to do it.
Yeah.
But that requires some self-awareness.
Yeah. And my sister was saying like she found she was always shooting for the moon. So it was like deep cleaning the bathroom was the only option.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she's like, sometimes like if I don't have energy or motivation, or if I'm constantly not showing up for myself, then I can't just shoot for the moon assuming I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's
Yeah.
like, so just set more realistic like goals, I guess, for yourself, or those smaller tasks that we were talking about, and then that will like,
Mhm.
you know, it's less daunting, kind of going back to how we started this
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like I'm guilty of, I think it's maybe to do with like perfectionism, where it's
Yes.
like I can't start putting away my laundry because I don't have the energy to put away my laundry and do like a new load and then deep clean my bedroom and then organize my
Yeah.
closet, where it's like you don't have to do all that. You could just put away your laundry and
Exactly.
do the other things other days.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you do something, you know, I feel like that motivation will definitely come back. And I think too, we have an episode kind of on like routines and whatever. And I think we recorded it right when I was reading Atomic Habits, which
Oh,
I
yes.
absolutely loved. And I still recommend that book to everyone, especially if you're in a slump and you're like
Mhm.
looking for motivation. Like I thought it was a really helpful self-help book, but the book is all about focusing on your systems. And I think that's something like when you're talking about like how to find motivation is
Mhm.
find, you know, a system that works for you. And in this case, like in the case of the book, I was reading it while I was doing a workout program. So it was kind of like find what motivates you to work out,
Mhm.
if it's, you know, or what's holding you back from working out. So like an example could be if you're like, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and work out before my workday starts because I don't have time, you know, through the
Yeah.
day, whatever, to do that workout, but you're not a morning person, then you're just setting yourself up to fail. Like that
Yeah.
system isn't going to work for you.
Yeah.
So I think just focus on the system, break down those tasks, and show up for yourself, and that motivation will come.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah. So maybe actually this is a good segue into the next question, which is also a little bit about motivation, but more so about working out. So this person wrote in, I've lost all motivation to work out since summer ended. Any tips on how to get back on track?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I feel
relatable.
like it's easier to work out in the summer for sure
Yeah.
because I mean, at least for me, living in the city, I find so much time is spent like, oh, we're going to walk to this place, or we're going to do this, or like we had a pool in our backyard and we would do stuff outside. And especially if you live in a small place, like a small apartment, it can be really hard to be like, okay, now we have to push the furniture out of the way to start doing a workout.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's still important to move your body. So this is a great question.
Yeah. And I know this is so like bad, but I also am always encouraged through the summer to work out because I'm like, I'm wearing little tank tops, I'm wearing shorts, I'm, you know, like wearing bathing suits. And for like aesthetic reasons, for some reason that does like motivate me a little bit more. I don't know why, but then in the winter, it's like, well, I'm just like under huge sweaters anyway, you know, like I don't feel like working out. Also, it's just like sunshine, like I just feel motivated through the summer. I said motivated, so weird just now. But it's just like, I want to eat healthy. I want to move my body and it's sunny and beautiful out, whatever. But I think similar to what we were just saying for just like general motivation, same goes for working out is don't wait until you're motivated to work out. Like sometimes you have to just force yourself to turn on that workout video, to go to yoga class, to go for a walk, because like I feel like Yoga with Adrian says this all the time, but showing up is the hardest part. And it's so, so true. Like once you're on the yoga mat, you're like, okay, well, yeah, you know, doing the actual yoga class is easy. But it's like the idea of like putting on your clothes, like grabbing your mat, like all of that becomes like the daunting part we were just talking about. So you just have to push through that and just show up for yourself regardless.
Yeah, I'm also a huge, I don't know what the right word is, like fan of walking. And I feel like people think walking doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But that's not true. Like it might feel like it's not actually a workout, but compared to sitting on the couch, it's like a mile of difference. So I'm a huge, huge fan. Even if you like something my family does, like various members of my family, is set a goal to walk every day for a month, something like that. And it's something that sounds so easy and so simple that it feels like, why even bother scheduling this in? But then by the end of the month, you're like, no, that was hard.
Yeah.
Like you achieved something, and it does improve your physical fitness. Like you see stories all the time of people who lost a bunch of weight by only walking.
Yeah.
And I just feel like in the winter, once I learned how to like dress appropriately for the snow, walking became so much fun. Like I got my big boots and my big gloves and hat and scarf, and I could walk for like an hour, and I look at everyone's like Christmas lights if they've got them up. And I just like, I live in a neighborhood where you can see in everyone's houses as soon as it gets dark. And I'm like, yes, show me what is in your house. And I just have the best time being like the nosiest neighbor.
That's so funny. That's so true though. Like I find I'm that person where I'm like, no, walking isn't enough. Like I also need to go home and crush an ab workout or like, you know, do some sort of intense workout. But realistically, before the pandemic, I didn't ever really drastically gain weight, but I wasn't actively working out ever.
Yeah.
It was all just because of the commute. Like, I took, you know, I walked to the subway, walked to the bus, like commuting. I got so many steps in commuting. And as soon as I stopped doing that commute because of the pandemic and started working from home, that's when I started like gaining weight, you know, like it's not because I stopped going to yoga once a week, like because that was part of the routine. It was just in the steps and the commute and stuff. So definitely recommend that too. I can get behind that.
Yeah. I think another thing that's brought up like in all the fitness forums and all the Facebook groups and stuff is finding an accountability partner.
Yes.
And whether that's like hiring a personal trainer, or if it's, you know, being in one of these groups and finding an online buddy or someone in your family.
Yeah.
I know like I have an Apple Watch and it always has challenges that isn't necessarily with a person, but it still, I find, keeps me accountable to do some form of fitness.
Yeah.
And I know like my mom signs up for challenges where she has to walk. So she has to walk around the island of Australia virtually.
Oh my
I
goodness.
know. It's a whole thing. But then you
Yeah.
like submit how far you walk every day, and when you're done, you get a medal.
That's
Like,
very cool.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like what you were talking about at the beginning with like those systems.
Yeah.
I feel like if you have these kind of systems in place, it not only holds you accountable, but it also, I feel like, makes it feel more like a reward when you're successful, because you
Yeah.
get to share your success with other people. It's not just like, yeah, I killed that. I'll keep that locked inside and think about it. You know,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
get to
yeah.
celebrate with other people.
Yeah, 100%. At my last job, we used to do step challenges,
Mhm.
and it was crazy how much that motivated me to go for a walk every day. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just, I think, I'm trying to remember what app we use. It was totally free. I think it was called Stride Kick,
Hmm.
and you can like just sign up basically for free and join or like create a team, I guess. Or I
Right.
think even they have just like public teams that you can
Mhm.
join if like you don't have your own team and you just sign up individually. But that was always so good. It would be like a month-long challenge, and whoever had the most steps at the end essentially won. So
Right.
I think that's great. You can do it with your team at work, because I think come winter, like again, this is like common, like everyone kind of loses that motivation to work out.
Yeah.
So I bet everybody at work would be like on board for this, you know what I mean? Or do it with your family, do it with your friends, like put some sort of competition in there to get kind of light the fire under everyone's butts.
Yeah, I feel like even if you make a workout an activity, like if you're like, hey, friend, you want to go out and grab a coffee and go for a walk? Or do
Yeah,
you want to sign up for this workout class with me?
exactly.
And then it becomes social and fun, but you get the benefit of still moving your body.
Yeah, even just like taking a hike
Yeah.
or going for a walk through the park with your friend, or like suggesting that for a date idea, like especially
Yeah.
like Christmas light, like walking around the neighborhood
Oof,
looking at Christmas
yes.
lights on a date. Like how cute. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like above all else, kind of going back to like find something that encourages you or motivates you. I feel like anytime I stop working out, I instantly feel it in my mental health, and I just
Yeah.
feel like so, irritable, whatever. So for me, like if I'm like, how do I word this? But just like I'm finding it hard to show up for myself to move my body.
Mhm.
If I'm just like, but this will be good for me mentally as well.
Yeah.
There's no denying that, you know what I mean? And it's like makes it a good reason for me to prioritize it in my day to day, where
Mhm.
I'm like, yes, I'm moving my body. That's great for all these reasons, but it's really great for my mental health as well.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah.
So the next question we got was that lots of companies are hiring, and I'm envious of all my friends who are starting new jobs. Where do I start when looking for a new job, and how do I keep positive after so much work rejection?
I love this question. I think it's so relatable when you're in your 20s, because
Yeah.
like first of all, I feel like there's a little bit of like comparison in here, like
Yeah.
which is not great, and like I don't know. I feel like that's one thing, but also just being like, "Okay, I'm ready for something new.
Yeah.
When do I make that move? How do I do it?" I think this is a great question.
Yeah. I think that I feel like people who maybe like of older generations don't realize how hard it is and how much time is spent applying to jobs.
100%.
Like, I feel like we've all seen the memes that are like, a boomer's like, just knock on the door and use a firm handshake and you'll get the job. And it's like, obviously, people maybe aren't that naive,
Yeah.
but it is almost like another full-time job of
Truly.
applying, updating your resume and writing cover letters and updating your portfolio and reaching out to people.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. And like chances are you're doing this after your actual full-time job. So like
Yeah.
if you're currently working and you're like, I'm desperate to get out of here, you're probably burnt out from your 9 to 5 job. Then after that, you need to now fix up your resume, like write all these, job applications, whatever. So it's like you're tired. This is why you're looking for a new job.
Mm-hmm.
How do you have energy to apply to new jobs? So I totally feel that. Oh God, this is bringing me back to the last time I was like applying to
Yeah.
jobs, and you're just like so desperate for something to work out. You feel like you're sending all these resumes out and you're
Yeah.
not hearing back. Like literally the worst. But
Yeah.
one thing I do want to remind you, especially when it's how do I keep positive after so much work rejection? I just want to remind you that it takes applying to a million jobs, maybe not a million. This is not a hardcore fact.
Yeah.
But it takes applying to a million jobs just to land a handful of interviews to
Yeah.
ultimately get one job. Like when I think of how many resumes I've put out in my lifetime, I've only had like 5 jobs tops, like
Yeah.
3 of them being 3 or 4 of them being full-time jobs. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it sucks, but like that's something I think to help you keep positive is like don't feel like it's a waste of time. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
something is bound to stick. You just need to kind of, I guess, wait it out or like keep positive that it will work out and you will find that one job.
Yeah, it really is a numbers game. Like I know you can see on Reddit and stuff, people share how many jobs they apply to and then how many
Yes.
interviews they get. And it's, like 1% of things you apply to, you actually get an interview for.
Yeah.
And so, as much as it's like maybe that's a depressing thing, it's like,
It's reassuring though.
yeah, and
Like it's
keep
not
applying,
you.
keep applying.
Exactly.
Don't be waiting for the perfect job and don't be overthinking that, oh, I
Yeah.
can't send in my resume because I'm missing that one skill.
Yes.
Like, just keep applying because it is a numbers game more so than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. And I think in this case, if you have friends who are making moves or changing their jobs, talk to those friends. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I was saying, don't just compare yourself to them. Like talk to them, get their advice, listen
Yeah.
to what they have to say, learn from their experience because if they're making those moves that you're wanting to make, clearly they've done, they're doing
Mhm.
something to get there. So
Yeah.
try to learn from that.
And it's another way to hear about more jobs. Like I know
Totally.
in my industry, a lot of places, they don't post on like LinkedIn or Indeed. They'll
Right.
post on Instagram. So then it's like, well, if you're not following them, how do you know? So ask
Yeah.
your friends, like keep an eye out. I want to be a PR person. Look for that kind of role coming up and then let me know and I'll apply.
Yes.
Like the more people who know, like I said again, it's a numbers game. The more likely you are to see a job posting and then you apply and it's just a number on your side.
Yeah. And I think kind of outside of your friends, like reach out to your extended network. So
Mhm.
for me and my past, it's been past professors, like people who taught me in college. They're still connected to the industry. So, my first job, I was so desperate to get out of there. And I was like, if you hear of anything, let
Yeah.
me know, because they would give me a reference. Like it all just kind of worked out. Same with past peers, like keep in touch with them or just
Yeah.
connect with them on LinkedIn, reach out to them, past coworkers, like whatever it is, and just let them know that you're looking to make a move and just to think of you or keep you in mind if they hear of any job openings.
Yeah, I in line with that is to keep your LinkedIn and your website and your resume always up to date
Yes.
because you never know who might be looking at your LinkedIn. You never know
Yeah.
who might reach out and be like, "Hey, can you send me a resume?"
Yes.
And so if this is something that you're serious about, you need those things to be looking top notch.
Yeah, 100%. And we have a whole episode on how to like fix up your resume, things to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Like I feel like we talk a lot about LinkedIn in that episode. Like so definitely go give that a listen if this is like what you're focused on right now in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like it's good to sort of customize definitely your cover letter for most jobs, especially if it's a job you're really passionate about, your resume. Because if you are someone who's doing the hiring, you're going to be looking through so many resumes
Yes.
and you want yours to be personal and to stand out. And so that's obviously very important because you're not going to get the interview without that, no matter how good your interview skills are.
That's so true. So I feel like don't mass apply to
Yeah.
jobs. Like don't use one resume and apply to every single job under the sun with it. Like you want to, like you said, customize it, tweak it for each job. And yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I feel like it's so easy to, especially with LinkedIn, like the amount of jobs that are like LinkedIn easy applies, where
How
it's
do you feel
like,
about that?
if it's a job that literally, like, if it's a video editor job and I'm a video editor, I'm like, okay, hell yeah, let's easy apply.
Yeah.
But if it's like something, like sometimes I'll apply to social media jobs because that's kind of related to what I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use the LinkedIn easy apply for that because my entire LinkedIn says video editor, video editor, video editor.
Yeah.
Like if that's the case and it's something that's a little bit outside of my day to day, or maybe a move that I'm trying to make in my career, that's where I'm like, I need to create a custom resume that lists out the social media things I do, maybe mentioning the video editing, but not where that's the focus, and apply with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, I don't know why. I feel like I've not read anything about this. It's just my own like personal opinion. As I find easy apply is just like the easy way out.
Right.
And I'm always like, no, I will never do it. Like I will always upload a resume just to show that I put in like that extra effort.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So interesting.
I feel like jobs that have the easy apply have so many more applicants.
Yeah.
Like with video editing jobs, it'll be like, okay, this company posts a video editing job and it's like upload your resume, and they'll have 100 applicants. If it's an easy apply, it'll have 500
plus.
So I feel like it's obviously people who are just, they search by easy apply and spam apply.
Yeah.
Because it's a click of a button.
And I feel like that's why I don't like it, because I'm like, I don't want to be lumped in with those people. Like, I don't know. Like, I want to be like, I don't know, stand out and be like, I actually want this. Like, you weren't just one of those that I mass applied to in my easy apply filter. Like, I don't know. But
I feel like
that's just me.
Yeah, every job I apply to, I kind of like rank differently for how much effort I put in.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's like, I know this job wouldn't be good, but it would pay well, okay, then I'll upload my resume and I'll do this. Where it's like, this job is my passion. This is my dream job. So I'm like, sometimes Indeed has like the extra questions. I'm going into so much detail in those extra questions. I'm uploading this and that.
Yeah.
So it also,
so true.
I don't know. It depends on how passionate you are for the job you're applying to.
Yeah. You know what's funny? While you were talking, it just occurred to me. Literally all the jobs that I've gotten, even internships, I got the ones I thought I bombed. Like if it was in the resume or in my interview. Yeah. Like I remember even my internship, I got this, I don't even remember what it was, like a marketing internship at Pre-Loved. I don't know if I think they're still around, but they do like upcycled clothing and stuff.
Right. Okay.
So this was when I was in college, and I remember I went on so many internships, because internships are a whole different thing, because you're like, I'm not even getting paid to do this. Why am I spending so much time and effort like on these applications? But anyways, they're great things. I do like encourage everybody to do internships and whatever. But anyways, getting sidetracked. I remember I did so many interviews, went to all these really fancy places downtown. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is my life. I'm in the city now. Then I went to the Pre-Loved one, and it was like in Scarborough. And I was like in the back of like this warehouse, like factory situation. And I remember coming home. It was pouring rain out that day. I remember coming home, texting my sister, being like, oh, I think I bombed that. And then the next day I got it, and I was like, what the heck? Same when I like started working anthropology part-time in school. I had no idea what anthropology was. I have no idea why they hired me, because I had no retail experience. I knew nothing about the company. Yeah. Totally bombed it, and yet I got it. Like, I'm not trying to like brag here or anything, but it's just like sometimes, yes, go above and beyond with the effort, but sometimes it's also the ones that you bomb that end up working out. Yeah. You know, like, and just roll with it at that point.
Yeah. The job that I have, my interview, it must have been in like 2018, maybe. Okay. But I don't know why that's important to the story. In fact, it's not at all. But in case you need to envision what Toronto looked like, it was 2018 in your mind. And I showed up for my interview 3 hours early because I had written it down wrong. Oh my gosh,
I remember this.
And like it was in my calendar right, but it's like I had looked at it that morning and then just completely misremembered it. And I went out there, but they were kind of convinced that they had somehow messed it up. So I just kind of rolled with it. And then so I was like, okay, so I'm not getting this job, obviously, because I just
Because I'm too keen.
Yeah, well, I'm like, it's pretty clear I obviously don't know how to read or I don't know how to use a calendar. So then the whole interview, I feel like I was really relaxed because I was like, there's no stakes because they're not going to hire me.
Yes.
And I was like joking about it. Like I was like, I'm not going to tell you I'm organized because
Clearly
I'm not. And they were like laughing. And then we just like talked about like the shows we were going to see downtown and like all kinds of different stuff. And then they ended up hiring me.
Yeah.
So it's like, what?
I
And they
love
were
that.
like, yeah, because it's like one really minor mistake. And I was like, yeah, it's actually just that I was so excited to meet you. And they're like, yeah, we could tell, like, and here I am.
Yeah, I love that so much. That's so, so funny. I feel like all of this is just to say that honestly, the universe works in mysterious ways, guys,
Yeah.
and things will always work out the way they are meant to. Like, I think back to one of my jobs, I was so desperate to get out, but I stuck it out for a couple more months until like I actually got a job offer from like all the resumes I put out there in the meantime or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was months after I had applied. And in those months, like there was so much happened that I feel like was such good personal growth for me. Like I started indirectly managing a team in those months. And like, I don't know, not everybody believes in this and I totally get that. But for me, it was like, it wasn't my time to move on yet. You know what I mean? So nothing worked out. But as soon as I was like, okay, I'm actually ready to move on. And the universe was like, hey, girl, here you go. Here's your next opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's how it kind of worked out.
Yeah. And I feel like even as someone like I've been laid off before, it's like all of these opportunities, whether it's you're being laid off or you're just finding yourself unhappy with your work, like it's a time to reflect and figure out, okay, is what I'm doing what I really want to be doing?
Totally.
What would I change? What do I want my work to look like? Because I feel like, I don't know, for a lot of people, it's like you leave school and then obviously you have to start working to, pay your student loans and pay for food and pay your rent. And you get kind of like stuck in a cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're really unhappy, figure out like what your dream scenario is.
Yeah.
And try to go for that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So I feel we've now hyped them up for their work life.
Yeah.
Especially on that last bit. Still
resonating.
Still resonating, yes. But the next question is all about dating. And this one I resonate with a lot as well. So this person wrote in, I go on a lot of first dates, however, not many turn into anything, not even a second date. I'm starting to think I'm the problem. Help. So when I first read this, I was like, first thing that came in my mind was Charlotte York from Sex and the City. And I feel it's been a while since we had a Sex and the City reference.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to sidetrack this a minute, but Charlotte York being like, I've been dating since I was 15. I'm exhausted. Where is he? That was the vibe I was getting from this. Sorry, before we go into answer this, have you seen, I just saw today that the Sex and the City like reboot and Airbnb teamed up.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yes.
I was like, oh my God. And they're renting it out for $23 a night. I was like, this is going to be insane. So it's going to be obviously like gone in no time and like all booked up. But I went to the Airbnb page today and it was all about like, it's hosted by Sarah Jessica Parker. Like it's like they've gone to the max. And I was just like, wow, Sex and the City, this is good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
They have a lot of, I feel like, branding stuff. Like I saw Sarah Jessica Parker just had like a new bag come out and I feel like the brand partnerships are going to be on point.
Yeah. But what's so interesting, this is me just being a huge snob right now, is their social media for it sucks. Like their social media content, I'm like, who is running this? Like Sarah Jessica Parker herself, like it's like very low effort and like weird, but the PR around it is amazing. So anyways, I was just like, Tegan, let's go to New York because I'm securing the Carrie Bradshaw Airbnb.
I'm down. Honestly, if we get in, I'm down.
I feel like I'm going to try because I feel like you got nothing to lose,
Yeah.
I think this episode comes out the day after the Airbnb goes live, in which case it's probably already sold out and hopefully Tegan and I have
we'll be on the way.
Honestly, girl, I'm going to book a flight if we get it.
Yeah. When's it come out? The show's December.
Yeah.
Ooh, it better be Christmassy.
We'll see. But anyways, back to dating, feeling like you're the reason your dates aren't turning into anything. First of all, I feel like Sex and the City is the best show to watch in this scenario.
Yes.
Because first of all, it's kind of like the jobs. Like you have to go on a lot of dates. If they're first dates, second dates, whatever. You have to go on a lot of dates, meet a lot of people to find the one. You know?
Yes.
Like I know that's maybe cliche and again, maybe not what you want to hear, but good things take time. And I feel like it's okay if not all those first dates turn into something, because if they all turned into something, you'd have a million boyfriends. Like, this is not realistic.
That would be an inconvenient problem. But I do feel like you just meet so many people. And it can reach a point where you're like, maybe it's just not for me. Maybe I can just be riding solo the rest of my life. But then I do feel like when you meet that person where it clicks, it's like instant, and you know, and you're like, okay, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yes. Okay, girl, this is like also like slight like hype up for me personally too. But that is it 100%. And this is something I'm constantly reminding myself. And this is also extremely cliche. Sorry, I'm throwing all the cliches at you today. But it's that quality over quantity where like every date I've been on. So sometimes I get also extremely insecure being like, I don't go on that many second or third dates. Like the majority of the dates I go on are first dates.
Yeah.
And like, eventually you start to think like, why is that, you know? But when I actually think about it and like reflect and like, you know, tune into myself for a second, I'm like, honestly, all those first dates I went on that didn't go to a second date, I didn't want them to. Like, when I was on that date, like, sure, it was fine. But it wasn't like I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like this is so great. There's nowhere I'd rather be than with this person in this exact moment. Like all of them, I was like, this was fine, but I would have had more fun sitting at home with a glass of wine watching Sex and the City by myself, you know? So I think, you know, don't measure your success by the number of dates you're going on, more so, you know, how you're feeling when you're on those dates. And I think that is a good, little reminder.
Yeah. Well, think of, let's say you're trying to make like a new best friend, because let's say the person you end up dating, your soulmate, they're going to be like one of your best friends, probably.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. And so think of even just like the friends you meet out of all the people you run into. Like it's rare for you to meet someone and be like, this is going to be my really good friend.
Yeah.
Like maybe one person that you work with, maybe one person, you know, and that's kind of normal and acceptable. But for some reason, it's like with dating, there's this standard that you have to go out and meet the perfect guy in a cute scenario. And it's going to be like you touch hands on the subway. And when
Sparks
it's like,
flying.
That's not really realistic. Just like how it's not realistic for you to make best friends with someone who's buying a coffee behind you at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Like these things take time and there's a lot of error. Like the amount of terrible people I meet that I'm like, I never want to talk to you again, let alone have you be my friend.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that like helps me when I am feeling insecure about this is doing a little gut check and just saying like, why isn't there a second date?
Yeah.
Like for me personally, I feel like I hold myself back in a lot of the time where I'm like, you know, for personal problems, whatever. And it's more so just like, okay, things I need to work on, you know, like opening myself up to people so they know I'm open to a second date, you know, or something like that. Or if it's like a second date, I feel like that's when you start kind of like holding back. I don't know. So just doing a little gut check and seeing if there's something that you do want to work on for yourself. Or is it just the fact that you're waiting around? You're always waiting for the other person to initiate the second date.
Right.
You know, like maybe you did have a good time. Maybe you're not standing in your own way.
Yeah.
But you're waiting on them. Maybe you just need to reach out to them and like ask them for the second date. You're the one to initiate it. So yeah, just maybe do a little self-reflection. Journal it out. Of course.
Yeah, I love that. Because I feel like it's also easy, like you were saying, to reflect back and be like, why aren't I getting a second date? I must be horrible. I must be ugly. When
That's
it's
what
like,
I feel this person's doing.
Okay.
Because they're like, I'm starting to think I'm the problem. How?
Yeah. When it's like maybe when you're reflecting back, you are more interested in the idea of dating than the actual person. When the person is the most important part and should come before the idea of dating.
Yes. And I think if you get to that point, especially with like dating apps where it's again like applying to jobs becomes a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
dating can become a full-time job. So if you reach the point where you're just more so like obsessed with dating versus like finding a person for you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
take a hiatus from your dating apps, you know? Like it's okay to take time for yourself and just like recharge, you know, like get that energy back or like step away from the situation and like gain some perspective or like refresh your perspective because dating really should be a fun experience, you know, meeting people. It should empower you, not have you like questioning everything about yourself or making you think you're the problem. So take a break if it starts wearing you down.
Yeah, I love that because it should be fun. And like, obviously it can be stressful to put yourself out there, but it shouldn't feel like work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like, I feel it's always, I think we also have an episode on this. It's like getting ready for a date. It's always like anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Or like the small chat being like, okay, like initiating a date, like all of that. But as soon as I'm on a date, like usually it's a fun time, you know?
Yeah.
And like that's the part you should be enjoying and getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like once it gets to that point, you'll either know and be like, I want to go on a second date. And then I think if that's the case, you should let the person know.
Yeah. 100%.
And if not, be like, hey, I tried.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah. I actually think that's another really great thing to like mention is like if like it's not turning into anything because you're being ghosted, like make sure you're not ghosting people too. Like don't be a double standard kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Don't put those vibes into the world.
Yeah. So it's like maybe do some self-reflection like while you're reflecting on dating in general. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something you said made me think of that. And now I'm like, I don't remember how that connects. But whatever.
Yeah.
We're rolling with it.
Yeah. So the last three questions we have are like podcast related, less like advice and more just like questions about us. So the first one is, what is the hardest subject to cover on the podcast? I feel like the episode where I felt the most like maybe insecure was the mental health episode. Because that was an early one, but it felt like simultaneously I was opening up too much and also that I was being like a poser, which I feel like is a big, I don't know, part in like mental health is like, well, you're not sick enough. And so I felt like, not now listening to it, like I'm proud of that episode, but definitely recording it. It was like, I don't know, those kind of feels.
Yeah. I feel like I know we're like, hey, we can, rapid fire through these ones. Now we're like very in our feels reflecting. I honestly think like Tegan and I already have like a episode for the end of the year plan for like a yearly review kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of coincides with like when we started this podcast. But like this year was like not one of my best years, yet I'm coming on this podcast being like, this is how you live your best life. Right. So I've experienced so much imposter syndrome like through this, regardless of the topic. So I'm like, I don't know. Like they're all kind of hard.
Yeah. It is hard to come on and talk about monthly goals if you haven't achieved them.
Yeah.
Which I feel like maybe that's important and why we should keep talking about it because obviously like listeners aren't going to be achieving their goals every single month. Or if they are, they're probably not setting their goals high enough. But it is hard to be like, okay, a month ago I said publicly I was going to do this thing and I did not even start.
It's on the internet.
Yeah. And so probably when we get to the year end, it'll be like, okay. Some of our goals we definitely reached. I remember them, but some of them, like, I don't even remember. So I probably didn't reach them if I'm not thinking about them now.
Yeah. I'd say the easiest things for me to talk about are work. Yeah. Like, because that is just something I get like passionately chatting about all the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like, the self-development stuff can be hard to talk about. And also dating. Just because it's like, I don't go on a million dates. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I don't know what advice to give people. Like, I don't know if my advice resonates. I'm also like, I feel totally different, like totally differently minded. I don't know how else to word that. I'm sorry, that was awkward. Than my friends. Like when we're talking about dates and stuff,
right?
They'll be like, "Can you believe he did that?" And I'm like, "What's so wrong with that?" Or like watching The Bachelorette or whatever, and they'll be like, "This guy, oh my God." And I'm like, "I like this guy." Like, I don't know. It's weird. So I'm like, hey, I don't know. So talking about dating on the podcast is also kind of hard for me.
Yeah, me too. Because it's like, I met my husband the second week of university. Yeah. And it's like, those are your prime, like, dating, partying, hookup years.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know. Especially because our dating was like, we'd go to the movies or we'd like hang out in my dorm. Like, I don't know. Yeah, and I skipped the dating app thing.
Oh, girl. So lucky.
I know. The part I want is to judge people and swipe. Like, I don't want to
open my app.
I will. I don't want to talk to the people.
Why haven't we done that?
I just want to be like, swipe, swipe, swipe. Because that
perfect
sounds fun to me.
Yeah. Okay, great. We now have our next podcast episode where we live record Tegan swiping people.
Yes. Yeah. We'll like screen record and I'll just be like, so this guy's name is Enrique. And he says this.
Yeah. Our YouTube like video podcast
for Patreon.
Debut. Yeah. Oh, yeah. For Patreon. Oh, man. So funny.
The next question is, what is the most challenging part about making a podcast?
I think kind of that imposter syndrome kicks in. I put that in here as well.
Mm-hmm. I would say the consistency for me, because it happens literally every week.
For 41 weeks.
Yeah, is the point. But at the same time, it's true. Like, some weeks you're just like, I want a break. But then it's like,
I feel this is tying this whole episode together, actually, because like there's some weeks Tegan's not taken a single week off since we started doing this. And like she edits the podcast and everything.
Yeah.
I feel like I took the 1 week off from recording and I feel like I like definitely have like slacked on like social content some weeks and stuff. But it's like we keep showing up even when we don't want to. You know what I mean? Like through this whole year, Tegan's planned an entire wedding. You know what I mean? But she's still showing up for the podcast. And like we've switched jobs, but we're still showing up for the podcast. So like it is hard, but I think that's been the question is what's the most challenging part of making a podcast? Like the consistency is hard, but it's also kind of the most rewarding because I'm like, if I were doing this by myself, I would be done by now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we would not be here in person recording this 41 weeks later.
Yeah.
Like, so it's challenging, but rewarding.
Yeah. Oh,
and
definitely.
You fight through even when you're not motivated to do it.
Yeah. I feel like I enjoy most things with it. It's just there are days, especially like
work.
Especially like a Sunday. Yes. If I like went out Saturday and I wake up and I'm tired and I'm like, I know I have to edit the podcast.
Yes.
And it's like, ugh. Yeah. But then I do it and then it's done. And I think what helps is that it's relatively like simple. Like we don't do anything too crazy. It's just like us having a conversation.
Yeah.
So the editing doesn't take me too long. I think if it was a bigger production, I don't know that I could have kept going.
Yes.
But I have. And here we are.
And here we are. Hopefully for another 41 weeks.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I do think it'll be nice, like, looking back.
Yeah.
Like
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
it'll
what
be
people
cute.
Yeah, that's what people always say about vlogging. Like all the vloggers I watch on YouTube, they're like, I started doing this when I was 12 years old. Like I have my whole life documented. I'm like, that's so nice. Like for them personally, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird you like make that public so everybody's along this journey with you, but I feel that's what makes it so like awesome. I don't know.
I think that's nice. I just think like I don't know. It's nice to have things on the record. Public. Like I think about I don't know. I did a podcast with my grandma.
Yes.
And then it's so like good. I will always have like a video recording of my grandma's voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Love that.
Too.
If you die tomorrow, I can listen to these episodes of the podcast.
Actually, it's so funny. I feel now we're just getting into chats, but this is the problem when we're recording in person. Yeah. So I'm like, I wanted to tell you this, like when I saw you in person last. But anyways, at Tegan's wedding, there were two people that were like, are you Sadie? And I was like, yes. They're like,
Ooh.
oh yeah, I know your voice from the podcast.
Oh my
And I was like,
God.
what? Like, it's just so funny.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wow, yeah. People know
Now
my
you're
voice.
famous.
Like, yeah. And obviously it's not a surprise that people in your circle would know of the podcast.
Yeah.
But not
yeah.
know me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was just like, yes. So little shout
Interesting.
out. Thanks guys for being like
Yeah.
making me feel good and like a celebrity for having a podcast.
Yes.
For recognizing my voice.
Oh,
Anyways,
so good.
my voice is off today, so I do apologize for that.
We're still recovering.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
man. Last question. So has podcasting changed the way you approach anything in your day-to-day life?
I feel like all of this I'll talk about more in like our year-end episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Little sneak peek, I guess. Hang in there another couple weeks to get the answer to that one.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. I feel like no.
Mm.
Because
yeah.
I feel like this podcast, this is like so deep and I'm so sorry. It's also like late when we're recording this. I'm just like starting to spill my soul. Yeah. But like we started this podcast because I feel like I was always like, yeah, live your best life. Like, yeah.
Right.
And then this year I was like the one who needed that content, not the one who could produce it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been struggling this year and I feel like the podcast hasn't really been helping me.
Mm.
Instead, it's just been making me, like I was saying, like have imposter syndrome because I'm like, I'm preaching this, but I'm having a really hard time practicing it in my day-to-day. Like, I don't know. It's been weird.
But maybe it would have been worse if you weren't thinking about it. Like, the only ways that I can think of it changing my life is like maybe I think more about like goal setting and trying to be better, which is stuff that I didn't think about like overly much, like on the day-to-day. That's why I feel like maybe even just having it like be in your mind.
Yeah. I think too, for me, what it has helped with is just like oftentimes you guys have been listening to this for a few weeks. This podcast just becomes like my open rant session.
Yeah, that's
so I
true.
feel like it's just like blowing steam sometimes. Like, and that has been extremely helpful. But I don't know if that like changes anything in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, it has, I feel like, made us
therapy.
Closer because it's like a consistent standing date where we see each other and can talk. And even though like most times we don't really talk overly much outside of what the podcast is, it still can be like, hey, how's your job? Oh, it's good. Okay, cool. You know?
Yeah. And we deep dive. You know, like I can't imagine. Well, yeah, I kind of can because it's me. But like just like sitting down and like asking like probing questions or like, you know, like having like an outline to be like, okay, Tegan, we're going to talk about this in extreme depth. Like, that's not how conversations work. So it's like, this has been good in our friendship. I agree.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that is the last question.
Yeah.
So we are going to wrap up this Q&A episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. We drop a new episode every single Tuesday. And between Tuesdays, you can find us on social media. We are at Our Golden 20s on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest, you name it, we're there. We also have a Patreon, which is the best way to support the podcast for as little as $2 a month. You also get you get access to exclusive content, as well as we drop all of our episodes early there. So definitely check it out. It is a fun time. And I think that's everything. So we will see you guys next Tuesday.